Hello. Is everybody having a good morning? Yeah. Great. So I know Felix asked it, but I couldn't see, and I want to get a read of the audience. How many people here use Trello? Okay, cool. So we thought it would be fun if we actually made a Trello board to curate your questions. So kind of in the spirit of experimentation and in exploring how technology organizes people, if you want to ask a question, we'll be getting to questions at the end of the session. Please add them to this Trello, to this link. If you don't have a Trello account, please sign up. This actually is not a plug for Trello, but it's just a useful, fun thing to do. And all you need to do is add yourself to this board, and then you can add questions. There's some rules on the left-hand side of kind of guidelines of how to add the questions, and then we'll be picking on those who have added them there. So I know I asked how many people use Trello. How many people use Slack? How about Google Docs? How many people use all three? Ooh. So my name is Athena, as Felix said, and I run an organization called Median that does organizational development and culture design for companies. And we do a lot of work with getting companies to change how they work. And a big piece of that is getting new technologies in the hands of these employees. And what we like to call the Google Doc, Slack, Trello mix is sort of the trifecta of new ways of working. It's completely changing the game for how teams work. And I'm really excited to dive into this topic today for the person who actually created one of these tools. So for the next 45 minutes, we're going to be diving into how teams work together and how technology is changing how that happens. So with us today is Justin Gallagher, and he was the founder, one of the founders of Trello. He actually designed it himself, and he launched the product at TechCrunch Disrupt in 2011, and is now the VP of product. And sort of fun fact, he is an avid mountain climber and hopes to be the American warrior, right?
Yeah, the next American Ninja Warrior, actually.
So to start off, I wanted to ask you a question. We're sort of in this crazy transition mode. I know I see it every day. I'm sure you do. What do you think is actually causing this shift in how we work? What is at the crux of what's happening, and how does technology affect it?
Yeah, so good question, I think. It's something I think about a lot. We think about this a lot at Trello because we're kind of trying to build a product for the way people are starting to work and are going to work, as opposed to the way they were working 5 years ago. There's a lot of people, probably including a lot of people here, who are have far more expertise on this than me, but I think the two main things that I think about are, one, just some generational sort of ideas about work and how work fits into life. And I think people, particularly in their late teens even, but early 20s to like early 30s, have some different thoughts on how the separation between life and work. And I think a lot of that is really enabled by mobile. And some of it is obvious that you have apps and you can do your work on your phone and that kind of stuff, and notifications and your email and whatever. But I think more so, it's just mobile has really blurred the lines a lot between your time at work and your time not at work. And whereas it used to be maybe that you would go into your office and you had a file cabinet full of all your stuff, and that you had to be there to do stuff to those files or get that information or whatever. Now it's it's all on your phone, and you can look at it at night or whatever. And I think that is really changing things. That's leading to people sort of having this less of a work-life balance, which doesn't even necessarily, sometimes it means, but doesn't necessarily mean that you're working 24 hours a day. Hopefully it doesn't mean that. It just means that it's not there's not this defined period of work and this defined period of not work. It's sort of, they're very intermingled throughout. And I think that leads to just a lot of changes in the way that people interact with each other at work and people think about work. And it opens up new opportunities for tools that can help with that stuff.
So Trello was born out of your head, and a colleague of yours had. Can you tell me that story? And can you tell me what was the problem that you were trying to solve? Like, why did you actually build this to begin with?
Yeah, sure. So I got a lot of great credit there from you and from Felix for creating and designing Trello. Far too much credit. I was part of the initial team. I certainly can't take credit. It was totally a team effort, and would not have happened without all the smart people. that I was working with at the time. But I worked at Fog Creek Software, which maybe some of you have heard of. It's a software company here in New York, downtown. Traditionally has made tools for other software developers. And I was a designer there working on those tools. And we did an exercise called Creek Weeks. And when you were doing Creek Week, you would schedule it with your manager and your teammates and all that kind of stuff. And during that week, you were totally relieved of all your day-to-day responsibilities, and you could work on whatever you felt like working on. The only rule was at the end of the week, on Friday, you had to show the rest of the company whatever you did and tell them about it. And so we had this idea bouncing around internally, which was to get better high-level understanding of what was going on. The problem that we were having was Stack Overflow. If anybody's known Stack Overflow, that's another product that came out of Fog Creek Software. Our founders, Joel and Michael, were spending their time bouncing back and forth between Fog Creek and Stack Overflow, and they were finding it challenging to stay on top of everything that was going on. Not at a super detailed level, because all that stuff was tracked in bug trackers and project management software and stuff, but like at a high level. Like, what are the big projects? Who's working on them? How far along are they? When are they going to be done? And then what's the next thing that's coming up? And those sound like easy questions that should be easy to answer. And usually if you talk to a good manager or a good executive or something like that, they can answer those questions off the top of their head. But it turns out in software, often that's like a hard question to answer. It's not so easy. So we wanted to come up with something that answered that question. We thought that it would be a good idea to do it visually, so that if you looked at what turned out to be a Trello board, kind of within a minute, you'd be able to answer those questions. And so that's where we started.
So I know I mentioned this kind of trifecta of Slack and Google Docs and Trello. I don't see Slack and Trello as necessarily competitors, but I'm curious what kind of these new suite of team software tools, what's the role of Trello in that, and how do you see all of those three kind of working together or not working together?
Sure. Yeah. So we use that trifecta at Trello too, and I know at least Slack uses Trello. I don't know if they use Google Docs or not, but Slack is a Trello customer. Trello is a Slack customer. I think they go hand in hand together. The way we think about it, our CEO Michael likes to use this analogy, kind of a search and rescue type analogy. Slack is communication, right? So Slack's your radio. When you have to talk to people and know what's going on with your team and ask them a question and give them updates, like that's Slack, and that's super important, critical. You need that. And that's great. Trello, on the other hand, is your GPS. It's what you look at, tells you where you are, where you've been, hopefully how you're getting where you're going. And each of those tools independently is important and valuable, but together, if you can see that map and you can talk to your who you're working with, that's huge together. And then I think Google Docs fits in there, in that everybody still needs documents. You still need to write stuff. You need spreadsheets. There's different documents that are good for different types of things, and I think that's a natural addition to both of those parts of the puzzle.
Cool. So I asked you to bring your laptop here for a reason, because I want to know how Trello uses Trello. Yeah. So would you mind unlocking your computer and opening up a few boards for us to see how it works?
Yeah. So let me see.
It wasn't just to
with
not use my laptop
and everything. I'll try my best here. Let's see. All right, let's see here. I'm on Wi-Fi. Is it going to work? If not, I'll switch to my phone. Looks like it might be working. All right, so this is Trello. This is my real Trello account. If it loads here. All right, let's try this. Stick this. We're going to go cellular here. If it shows up. There it is. Mind just sticking that on that table for me? All right, we're in, I think. Okay, this is, can everybody see? Can you see it on the side TVs or back here? TVs? Okay, cool. So obviously we use Trello for everything at Trello. It's sort of how we figure out what to do with the product and kind of push it to its limits to figure out what we want to add or change or whatever. I have like a million Trello boards. This is only a subset too.
Wait, how many boards do you have?
Honestly, I don't know. In the Trello team, gosh, we have to have like 200 maybe, and I have a few teams. I probably have like 300 Trello boards, maybe something like that. And they all range. Some of them, I call them like scratch pad boards. It's just like I was talking to somebody and I went to write my notes down, and I did it that way just because sometimes it's nice to be able to drag those things around and kind of categorize them in real time. Some of them, which I'll show you in a moment, are like projects, and they exist for 3 months, so the length of whatever the length of time of that project is. Some of them are like resources that exist forever. They're either, company boards that give the status of the company. I'll show you an example of that, or they're like sort of reference material, literally. So the first board I'll show you here is an example of kind of a project board. So this is new user experience. We have a new user experience team who's working on our sign-up experience and that educational onboarding flow there. And so this is the board that they use to manage their stuff. So this kind of has a combination of things here. The leftmost columns there, the new user experience projects, the strategy and progress list, those are references. They go elsewhere. So like if I open up, let's say this homepage card, there's a whole bunch of stuff back here that talks about things that they want to do to that. It links out to like other boards that have more details on that particular project. But this is nice because if I'm like, hey, what are we doing with new user experience? I can come here. This is my home base for that. You can see here's another card that they're working on, transactional email audit. So there's a bunch of stuff in here. There's some linked Slack conversations. I'm logged out of Slack, so I can't see those now. But if I were logged in, it would show the preview of those Slack conversations. There's some attachments here. This is a GitHub change set in particular here. There's a bunch of checklists. There's some other linked stuff. So this is like the home base for those projects. And projects tend to kind of move across here. So there's stuff that's being designed and written out. There's stuff that's being built. There's stuff that's being tested. There's stuff that's shipped. And then further to the right are stuff that's like in the future. We put them further to the right because like if you put them on the left, it just kind of pushes everything over. It's nice to be able to see the stuff that's actually happening right now first. But next up are some upcoming projects, and beyond that are just like ideas, stuff that we thought of that maybe we'll do someday. We're not sure yet. The nice thing here is you can see part of what we try to do at Trello is we try to have the board itself give you an idea of what's going on the project at a high level. So even just that left to right orientation helps. You start to recognize things. People are really good with visual and spatial memory. It's I don't know why, probably like some survival instinct, so you don't get eaten by a tiger or something. But you tend to like remember that stuff and notice it. And so if you are like, oh yeah, that red card, right? And I might know if I use this board all the time that red is related to boards. Like, oh, the red one was over. Last time I looked, it was on the left. Now it's on the right. Like something changed, and that your mind and your eyes will notice that fast, much more quickly than if you're looking at a grid of like metadata. And you're like, oh, that field in row 17 looks different than last time I was here. Like your mind isn't good at picking up those kind of changes. So we try to use that for that kind of perspective. So this is one way we use it.
So does every team, just sort of thinking like teams, technology is one thing. Every team uses a piece of technology, kind of anywhere from teams using like Basecamp or using Excel to manage their projects to Trello. What is it about this that supports this new way of working? Like, why is it that Trello has just exploded as this piece of software to support teams that are really distributed or really agile? Like, why does this work?
Yeah, so I have a theory. I don't officially know the answer, but I have a theory. I think more and more this like sort of way of working, distributed workforces and people working at different hours. So just to point back to Trello itself, we have about 100 people now working at the company. 1/3 of them is in New York, 2/3 are everywhere else. We have people. I was in a meeting the other day with me, someone in Hawaii, someone in San Francisco, someone in Nova Scotia, and who was the other person that was there? And somebody in LA. So it was like all over the place across like 8 time zones or something crazy like that. And if you're going to do that, you really need tools that make it easy and transparent to see what's going on, make it easier to discover things that are going on, and make it easier for people to just do their work and have that contribute to this sort of core of knowledge that everybody can then leverage to have good context, be aware of what's happening, make good decisions, that kind of stuff. And so I think tools that were made in the past didn't always do that. They were very permission heavy. They focused on like who can see what, and let me give people the rights to see this or not the rights to see this. Sometimes that's still important. There's definitely use cases for that. But I think overall, providing transparency, letting people be aware of what's going on, see what decisions are being made, really contributes to everybody's ability to do that. So like this board is team visible. So anybody at Trello can see this board. If you want to know what's going on in this project, you just check right in.
So we see a lot, I know in my work, I see a lot that this helps bosses to be able to kind of think of their role more in a pulling of information rather than a pushing of information. So I'm a boss. I don't have to necessarily like ask you to check in with me all the time. I can just sort of asynchronously check in. How does Trello manage their teams? Like, what's the management style at Trello? And do you use the tool that you've designed to support that?
Yeah, we do, definitely. And in fact, I think that we designed the tool as a reflection of the way we think about management. I don't even know if it was intentional, but it was like, if we were going to build a tool that we're going to use, obviously it needs to work the way that we think you should work. And so we think of management very much as like a support function. So managers are there to get stuff out of people's way, basically. They're not there to tell people what to do and decide what's the most important thing and, you know, hand out tasks and stuff like that. So we believe really strongly in hiring super smart, talented, motivated people, putting them together in little groups, giving them all the context and information that they need, and letting them make smart decisions and be creative. And so I think, again, that goes back to like transparency, discovery, enabling autonomy, that kind of stuff. And so when we think about management, it's mostly being able to understand what's going on, awareness of decisions that are making, context that's happening, maybe making connections for people sometimes if people are working on things that could be related or could, you know, leverage each other, or that kind of stuff. But it's not about dictating and, you know, checking if people are coming in on time and, you know, getting people in trouble and that kind of stuff.
So Trello's grown a lot. I think you were something like 50 a short while ago, and you're now 100. How has your use of technology, Trello, Slack, Google Docs, all of these things, how has that changed as you've scaled? And what have you done to make sure that this management practice or this team practice of transparency, of distributed authority has stayed as you've scaled?
Yeah, good question. So it's evolving all the time, and I don't think we've nailed it yet, honestly, but we try to figure out new ways all the time, especially as when we started, we were all in New York, and then over time, like I said, we're now 2/3 remote, 1/3 in New York. That's been a big culture change, really great overall, super positive, but has required us to change the way we work and the way we collaborate. It's making a conscious effort to kind of put things in public, you know, company public, to do things in places that people can see them and that kind of stuff. And so we use Trello for that. We use Slack for that. You know, the bigger we get, the more we start to kind of break those things. Like we were just having a discussion recently about how we need some better conventions around Slack and Slack channels, because we started to hear things where, you know, a project started up and there was a Slack channel for it, and then good, important stuff was happening in there, and then relevant people didn't know about it until later, right? Because we literally have like hundreds of Slack channels too, and like, so we need to start building in systems and best practices around that kind of stuff, and we're sort of figuring that out as we go. The other big one has been meetings and discussions. Everybody was in New York to start, so it was easy. You just get in a room and talk to people. As we started to go remote, we started to do the thing where it's like, oh yeah, Brett is in Hawaii. He needs to be in the meeting, so let's like go in the conference room. We'll put him on the TV. We realized pretty quickly that that's really not great. It puts somebody like it adds two classes of people to the meeting. So there's the people that are together, and there's the people, you know, on the video or whatever. And you know, there's internet issues sometimes. It's not always great to hear. The mics aren't good, whatever it is. It's just not a seamless experience. So now we have what we call a remote first meeting policy, which is like, if anybody in the meeting is remote, even if there's 10 people and 9 are in New York and 1 is remote, all 9 people in New York will sit at their desk and put their headphones on and do it through the video, which looks ridiculous sometimes because you literally have people sitting next to each other talking over video chat, but it makes for overall a much better meeting and you know, just a much smoother collaboration. And it lets the remote people feel like truly part of the company. We started to notice that there was this kind of like double culture. There was the New York culture and the remote culture. And some of that's inevitable just because people are in 2 physical locations, but as much as possible, really don't just have like one culture where everybody is all together on that. So,
Cool. Can you go back to that main board? Where your boards are. So I want to get to some audience questions. I first want to ask, is there any board that's up here that anybody like really is like, that looks cool, I want to see it? This is your time to see how Trello uses Trello.
No guarantees that I can show it, but I might be able to.
But you can ask.
You can ask.
Yeah. Can we see the birthday party?
This one. I don't even know what's on here, but you can see this one. I think this is a list of people who gave him presents, and then we had to keep it a list. Yeah. So this is the people who came. I have a better example than this, though. That's still birthday party related. So for anybody who's curious, we have Trello.com/inspiration, which is a list of boards. And let's see. I think there's a birthday example here. Here we go. It's not Ian is actually my son, and he actually did turn 5. Connor, I don't know who Connor is, but this is an example of using Trello to plan a birthday party for a kid, and picking a date and a guest list, and different options and bounce houses and ponies and stuff. And so this is a way that you can use it. When we think of work, and when I say work, I don't always mean like work at your company that you get paid for. That's definitely a big chunk of it, but like planning a birthday party is work, or if you're getting married and you gotta plan a wedding, that's work, or if you're moving, like there's work there. You gotta do your taxes, that's work. And so I'm using work in that broader definition of like just things you have to do generally with other people, but not even all the time either.
So we made the board. I think you have it on your.
I do. Our question board?
Yeah.
I'm nervous.
I'm excited. I want to see if this
okay,
worked.
we did get some.
It did work.
So my nerves are relieved a little bit. I thought it might be blank.
Okay. Let's see. Building. Ooh, I like this one. Building the product. What's your dream feature for Trello that hasn't been built yet? Who asked that question? Alex. Oh. I know. I was going to ask you to stand up and say it out loud.
Yeah, cool. What's your dream feature for Trello that hasn't been built yet?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if this counts as a feature. I mean, I think like my ultimate vision, or I don't know if it's ultimate, but my eventual vision for Trello is, the goal of Trello is to give you perspective, right? It's to give you this feeling of like, okay, I know what's happening and I know what to do next. And I sort of think of it, if you could like literally like talk to it and say like, hey, like what do I have to do today? Or what happened important yesterday while I was on vacation, or that kind of a thing. And we have ways of getting you that information now, but it's a little more pull and a little more manual. I think if we could get to the point where it was just like somehow smartly and through a variety of mediums, where you can get an email, or like you could automatically download a podcast that like tells you what happened yesterday that was important, or whatever, like that would be pretty amazing, to the point where you are more like interacting with it as like another person, or I guess an AI, than like a tracking tool. We're not close to doing that yet, but we're thinking about it.
I'm going to go to this one. I think it's nice. What cultural values do you think the use of Trello encourages? There's no name on that, so I won't call out anybody in the audience.
Man, that's a good question, too. I think a lot of what we think about and the way we built Trello, the way we built it, was that there's value in individual contributors who are really like deep in the problem and know the problem, making those decisions, and then being recognized for making those decisions. So like a lot of the way Trello is in terms of like relatively open permission-wise, and everybody can see the same thing and have that context. And then, if I move a card or check a checklist item, that's like an activity item that then gets bubbled up to the rest of the team, is sort of around that value of this idea that individual contributors are really like kind of the core of the business and the product, and that's where like kind of the magic happens, is those people using their brains to make creative, smart, new decisions and ideas, and then like adding that in.
I'm going to ask another. What types of boards are most useful for different teams?
I think I kind of think of them being, I said this earlier, I think there's being 3 boards. There's sort of these like temporary, like just jot some notes down and then maybe you throw that out. There's like project-based boards, and then there's resources. So like for instance, our employee manual is in Trello, and some people use that in a wiki or something like that, but we actually find that to be really useful in Trello because it has, I can even show it to you. It has a nice way of having everything in here. It's like a nicely broken up format. It's also really easy for us to update, and people can update it and ask questions right on here and all that kind of stuff. So this is an example of a reference. I think honestly most teams can benefit from each of those. It's just a matter of kind of how those fit in to what they're doing.
Okay, let's ask. I think we have time for a couple more. I'm gonna open it up to the audience for non-Trello users. Yeah.
How do you guys use email at Trello?
So we of course still use email. I mostly use email to talk to people who don't work at the company. So it's more like from internal to external. And it's more like people that I'm not working with frequently. So like we work with like, sometimes we're working with our investors or freelancers or a PR firm. Those people are on our Trello boards, relevant Trello boards only, but you know they're on some Trello boards. But when Athena and I were coordinating some of this, like we were emailing back and forth to get that set up, or you know, I don't know, different times people email. So I find that it's mostly like that. We don't have a lot of like, let me email you this big long thing and then like you respond and give me your thoughts. That would probably be a document that got written up, probably a Google Doc. So we've been using Dropbox Paper recently, which is quite nice. And a link to that would get dropped either on a Trello card or in a Slack channel, and people would find out about that way and do that, have that kind of an interaction there. So not a ton of email, but mostly with like external people, I would say.
What, according to you, is the biggest disadvantage of using Trello that you guys haven't been able to fix or solve right now? I'm not a Trello user, so
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to why I should get onto it.
Yeah, I think we think of Trello as this really like broad horizontal tool. Hopefully I kind of convey that a little bit through some of these boards and the birthday example and that kind of thing. Like you can use it for like any kind of project. That can be a hurdle to get over initially because it's like people who are newer to it and it hasn't clicked for them quite yet. It can be hard to, you sort of have this like blank page problem. You're like, okay, I'm here, but I don't really know where to start or what to do. And so that is something we're constantly trying to figure out and improve and help people get in through like a relevant specific use case to them that hopefully solves that particular problem they were having, but also kind of triggers that there's this structure that you can use for other stuff in your life too. So
We have time for one more question.
Obviously, the boards are only good as the information that goes into it. So what's the success in terms of getting people to update in the right way with the right information and be responsive?
yeah, so that's a great point. And we think about that in a couple ways. First off, Trello is designed to be useful to the individual people using it too, so that they can sort of like understand what's going on and work directly with their colleagues, but also provide a good summary up to their, their managers or the rest of the company, just through, again, the visual and spatial stuff. The other thing though is we're not trying to design Trello as like the tool to replace all tools and the only product you'll ever use, right? Like we know people are going to use Google Docs, we know people are going to use Slack, they're going to use GitHub, they're going to use Salesforce, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all kinds of stuff. And we're not trying to stop that. So we have a concept called power-ups, but they're basically like features you can turn on board by board. Many of them, but not all of them, are integrations with other things. So like as a software company, one of the things that we use a lot is the GitHub integration. And so our developers are doing stuff in GitHub. They're submitting pull requests, they're doing code reviews and commenting back and forth and merging those. If you use the GitHub power-up, you can associate those pull requests with the relevant card in Trello. And then what can happen is Trello, through just like the badge either is gray or it turns green when everything's been merged, it will represent some kind of like a higher level view on that data in GitHub, for example. So we try to think about ways that people can still work in the vertical specific tool that is relevant to their job and their industry, but as much as possible we can automatically pull some of that information to add to the overarching context. So like we'll have cards on projects that we're working on that have like GitHub change sets. They might have a Google Doc that's like the draft of the blog post that's going out. They have images, like you can attach a folder in Google Drive, so our designers will attach a folder of all the relevant design images, et cetera, et cetera. And so we think of like the card as like the starting point. We almost think of it like when I was using that file cabinet analogy, it's like the file for that project, and you open it, and all the stuff is in there, paper clipped together and whatever, and like that's where you start from it. And an essential part of that is being able to connect it to other tools so it can pull some of that stuff in.
And last question for you. One word to describe the future of Trello.
I don't know. What is one word to describe the future of Trello? I guess I would say, if I had to pick one word, I might say transparency, I guess, which I've used a couple times now, but it's really about spreading context and awareness of what's going on and giving people that high-level perspective view so they can feel like, they can make good decisions and they can feel comfortable knowing what's happening.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
all
you.
for listening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Athena and Justin. And one word for the future of this conference is lunch break. So have fun. See you in about half an hour.